What the heck? Welcome, everyone. Today, we are talking about leadership, and I will briefly introduce myself, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline Brown. I am Teresa Palmer, and I am a nurse practitioner, holistic cardiology nurse practitioner. And although I've held leadership roles, most of my work has been working one-on-one directly with patients, which has its own leadership in and of itself. And I'm also author of the book Heal Your Heart from Within, which is a guide to self-care for individuals. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jacqueline Brown.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm Jacqueline Brown, and I am an ICF certified coach. I am a behavior practitioner. My main focus is development and at the C suite level for women and focusing on divine feminine principles, which really is a nice new shift away from the old paradigm of leadership, encompassing empathy and being more intuitive, but also exercising more emotional intelligence. And so, thank you, Teresa, for us being here today. And I guess we can just get right into it. You know, we are at the end of the year, and this seems to be that time when there is a mad rush. And that's a mad rush for not just leadership, but those that are following under leadership. And sometimes it can get a little hectic. But today, I really wanted to give us a little bit of a focus on finishing strong with a leadership mindset for this quarter, but with a theme of align, assess, and accelerate. Sometimes we're so busy kind of rushing with what did not get completed that we forget to remain aligned, to assess where we are in this final quarter, and then accelerate, just kind of like push that pedal. So I'd like to just say good morning to all the leaders out there. And as we enter this final quarter of the year, this is the home stretch. And I just want to invite the leaders to pause, to breathe. And Teresa's going to definitely come in there with the heart and to reflect. The way that we finish often reveals more about our leadership character than the way we start. And I just want to make sure everyone got that. So I'm going to pause because I want you to really get it. The way we finish often reveals more about our leadership character than the way that we start. We began this year with goals, plans, and very good intentions. But now, as we approach the year's close, the question becomes, how will we finish? Leadership is not just about managing tasks, it's about mastering time, energy, and purpose. Now, this quarter isn't about hustle. I don't want anyone to walk away with that, but it's about honor. It's about finishing strong without the hustle and without being frantic. It's about aligning our vision, assessing our impact so far this year, and then accelerating with clarity into the next as we're moving forward. So, Teresa, I'm going to turn it over to you as we go deeper into this conversation. And tell me a little bit about what you feel about the power of alignment, because I mentioned alignment. Uh, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think alignment is the most important because when you're aligned with yourself. And by that, I don't mean aligned just physically, but it's emotionally and spiritually. And what it means is we all have this power within us. And that's the power for empathy, power for compassion, how our power to be leaders because of our self-confidence, and our power to take care of not only ourselves, but to help take care of others. And that could only come when you're really aligned body, mind, spirit, but you're aligned with your heart and your head. I think too often when we think of leadership, we think of the mind, and the mind is really the ego. It's really the mind wants to keep us in one place where we feel comfortable in our comfort zone. And once you start bringing your heart into it, aligning your heart and your head, now you're moving into what many call that higher knowing.
Mhm.
Some call it an ascension into more power. There's so many different names for it. But what it really means is you're connected with your inner knowing. And that inner knowing is our higher power. And we all have it. We all have access to it. And it doesn't matter what you call it. It's not really a religious thing. It's not really a spiritual thing. It's not a new age thing. It's simply what it is. It's that energy that aligns us to a power that's greater than us. Because regardless of what you call it, we're all interconnected. We do not do this alone. So, in leadership, when you're aligning with your heart and your mind, what you're doing is you're bringing everything together and you're actually connecting with everybody, whether it be on your team. For me, it was not only a team in a medical practice, but with our patients. There's a lot that we get connected to. And if we're not connected with our heart, I think we miss that important piece of alignment. And alignment is not difficult. Basically, all you have to do, like you said in the beginning, was pause. So every day, if you could sit quietly for a few minutes when you wake up in the morning, you are aligning yourself with your inner knowing, with your power. And when you are self empowered, that's what makes you a leader because you can't lead without having your own power. And that's self-awareness, self-confidence, empathy, compassion. It's also knowledge, going further with our knowledge. So that's what I have to say about it is I think alignment is just the most important thing because if you're not aligned, if you're out of balance, how do you really function at your best?
Absolutely. Now, so many things that you said, and I'm just going to hone in on a few. That when you talk about our inner self and who we are at our heart, at our core, and I totally agree with you. This is not about religion. This is about who we are from our inside out. It's about our vision, values, and our voice all moving in the same direction. And too often, I think leaders enter the fourth quarter reacting, putting out fires, closing gaps, so to speak, chasing numbers. But that alignment that we're talking about, that calls us to move intentionally. And what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes we have to revisit our why. You know, you can ask yourself, why did I start this year the way that I did? What was the purpose behind the initiatives, the goals, and the projects? Bringing that into focus. And if that purpose has shifted, that's really okay. There's just realignment. It isn't failure. Realignment is wisdom. And then sometimes it takes refocusing our energy. Every leader has to evaluate where their time and energy are flowing. Am I busy or am I productive? We can be busy, busy, but are we productive? Because busyness depletes, productivity multiplies. When we are so busy, busy, sometimes we're just depleting ourselves more and more. But when we are productive, we are multiplying. And sometimes it takes that reigniting our vision. Sometimes visions can fade when leaders operate out of exhaustion instead of inspiration. So it takes revisiting what ignited our passion at the start of the year. And then sometimes speaking that out aloud. Write it again. And then here's the important part, as Teresa often reminds us, align your heart before you adjust your strategy. Because if your heart is not aligned with adjusting your strategy, it's just going to be an adjustment, but it's not aligned with your heart. And you could find yourself right back where you were before. So, Teresa, what would you say when it comes to, uh, I'll say, assessing the accuracy of the why? Because I've said, ask the why. What would you advise for how do you assess that why?
Okay, well, since I work in the medical profession, the why is fairly simple. The why is, we're there to do the best by our patients.
Mm-hmm,
And I worked for many years in a private cardiology practice, and our goal was, were our patients getting better? Were our patients improving?
mm-hmm,
And were we making an impact on our patients, not only physically, but emotionally, with their mental health and spiritually? So that became our why.
mm-hmm.
And we had to assess that constantly. In healthcare, you have to constantly assess that why. Why is this going on with a patient? What is happening? What kind of impact? Why did this certain thing impact this person one way and impact another person another way? Because in healthcare, you're judged by what you do for your patients.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line. Is you could do all the marketing in the world, you could be on every cover of everything, every billboard in the world, have the best advertisement and marketing strategies, but if your patients aren't satisfied with you, then you get nowhere. And the why is, why and how can I help people? Why is this strategy working? Why isn't this working with patients? What do I need to change, or how do I need to improve it? And although I've held management positions in nursing, my
Mhm.
main focus has always been working with the patient. So the why is so important. Why is this happening?
You know, when you talk about that why, sometimes in especially in this fourth quarter, people are really busy counting results. And what you're saying is that they can be collecting wisdom, because going through the why, and have you really made the impact, not just counting the results, but this is a time when you're asking your why, you're actually collecting wisdom. In the technology field, data tells a story, but the context of the data tells the truth. So we can't just look at numbers. We have to look at the narrative behind the numbers. What systems worked? And I'm going to give this analogy in a more of a technology, I'll say metaphor. We have to ask ourselves what systems worked and what people thrived, what clients thrived based on them. And then what needs to be released or rebuilt. Everything is not always built perfectly. We wouldn't have new releases for all of the different programs and softwares and applications that we use if everything was always built perfectly. And very often we have to evaluate with courage. This is not a time to sugarcoat our reality. If something didn't work, acknowledge it, learn from it, pivot from it. Courageous assessment leads to creative advancement. You can really take and trust that. And then at the same time, celebrate the progress, not just what worked perfectly. Sometimes the biggest wins aren't in the numbers. And I'm not by any way telling a leader not to be concerned with the numbers and the targets, especially those that are in corporate America. I'm not telling you to forget about that. What I am saying is that the biggest wins are not always in the numbers, but they are very often in the growth, the resilience, because the growth and the resilience is going to take you into the next year. The breakthroughs that you've experienced in your team when under pressure. There's some breakthroughs that and successes that you had that you made under that pressure. Don't miss the miracles because you were starting at metrics. Also, see the miracles that are there, also to be celebrated. Teresa, let's talk a little bit about the lessons that we have gained this year and how they may shape us next year. Do
Yeah.
you have something that you may want to share, a lesson that you gained this year, and you believe that that lesson is going to shape you next year?
Yeah, I have a couple. First off, I'd like to say that with the leadership, like you said, the numbers, okay, how how we learn what the results were, what we did good, what we didn't do good. The medical profession, it's a little easy because we have ratings. And
Mhm.
every time a patient has a visit or a patient's in a hospital, whatever scenario it is, patients get to rate you. And there's nothing more heartbreaking that when you see something in writing that somebody didn't like what you did,
Mhm.
or there was a misinterpretation of how what you did or said to a patient was interpreted by them. And it really keeps you on your toes that you
Mhm.
constantly have to be aware of everything. What did I learn this year? I'm going to use an example that's a little off off the books, off the topic, because it happened to me recently.
Okay.
And that was I do have a published book. It's called Heal Your Heart from Within. And I never really promoted it much. I never really did much with it because it was basically written for my patients. And I decided uh, I got published by the sister company of Hay House. So as a result, I became part of the Hay House authors community and I had the opportunity to submit a proposal. And this just happened. So I submitted my proposal, and I thought it was a great proposal. I thought I had a great title
Mhm.
to kind of revamp the book, and I was really feeling good. Well, I didn't, my proposal did not get accepted. Okay, along with about probably 75 or 100 other proposals that went in. And what I learned was that I wasn't exact enough with a title that could be easily understood for people. What they would gain from my book by reading the title. Mine was a little ambiguous. I talked about heart wisdom. I talked about your heart is your superpower. They said, well, that's too general. If I pick up that book, I don't know what a superpower is, or maybe I don't know what heart wisdom is. You have to narrow it down. You have to be able to get an audience straight from the get go. And that's the title and the subtitle of your book, because publishing companies look at it as, if we can't understand your title immediately, what the
Mhm.
book is about, and who that audience is going to be, we don't want you. Because if you're writing for generalization and you're writing for everyone, you're not going to help anybody, and nobody's going to be interested in it. And I think that parallels with leadership, that a good leader, that you can't be general, you have to be specific. And I think the lesson that we all learn is that we have to be specific, that people have to understand from the get-go what we're talking about, what we expect from them. Like if you're running a team, what does your team expect from you? Is it perfectly clear? X, Y, and Z. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And people walk away and say, oh, I totally understand what Jacqueline is talking about. I totally understand how we're doing this or how we're working with the software or whatever. Or are people, your team, sitting back and saying, huh? Like, what is Jacqueline really talking about? She wasn't specific enough. She gave us a general of why we need this specific software program, or we need to go in this direction. But heck, we could go 20 different ways with that. And me, under her leadership, how do I know what direction to go? I'm confused. And a lot of times, your team isn't going to tell you that. They're just going to kind of flounder around, do the best they can, and they're not really truly understanding what you're saying. So I hope that that does help.
Yes, it helps tremendously. And I'm just going to stay with that for a minute because ambiguity is probably the biggest killer with, and it doesn't make a difference whether we're in a corporation. Ambiguity, there's no room for it in technology. And I use a lot of the frameworks and the processes that are used in engineering and technology to teach people how to apply that to their everyday life. Because one of the things that it removes is ambiguity. And I often give an example that you can say, I'm a store owner. And I say, I'd like to have an ATM machine in my store. I'd like for people to be able to get cash. And then you just say, I just want the ATM machine. I just want it to give money. Well, there's a couple of things that go along with that. What denomination do you want it to give? You want it to give money is a very ambiguous statement. Do you want it to give tens, fives? Do you want it to have large bills? Do you want it to offer a balance inquiry? Do you want the balance to automatically be given on the receipt? There's so many things from a requirements perspective that goes into that. And very often, as you stated, we can have things so broad that people are like, what really is that? And I found that my lesson learned this
Yeah.
year was sometimes we can be so busy helping our clients and others achieve their goals that we forget to apply the frameworks that we teach to others to ourselves. And so, much like yourself, with us both being authors, I found myself not going direct to who I want to speak to in my book. Now, the good news is that I'm at the fourth quarter. My book is in pre order. It has not had the final manuscript released so that it can be formatted and go up for publication sale. And I realized that I have to go back and I need to be, there's some areas I need to be very specific and remove any ambiguity. And there's something called an ambiguity review in technology. Well, I have to go back now and do an ambiguity review on my own project because I've been so busy helping everyone else really narrow down, really go into the heart, as we often talk about, tap into the emotional intelligence, and make sure that we're bringing forth what the intention is. And that's my example, sort of. So, as we're finishing this year, finishing strong really isn't about doing more, because everything that we've been saying is that we're really taking another look. We're removing ambiguity. We're looking at, okay, where do I make this better? Not necessarily saying I need to do more. It's not about doing more that matters most. In the final quarter, time kind of speeds up, but our focus can actually, as it slows down, because many people are focused on the holiday, we can take that to really think more strategically and not necessarily just say, okay, I'm going to move this over on the side as a failure, because there is no failure. There is, how do I do this better? And very often in the short period of time, we'll find that we actually sprint strategically and accelerate. And sometimes we are able to come out exactly where we projected or where we want it to be. Now, in all of that, prioritization and precision is really important. So I would say identify the top 3 priorities that will make the biggest impact before the end of the year. And if you can only accomplish 3 or one of the 3, accomplish the one that truly matters. Teresa talks about the heart, and hear what your heart is telling you. We live in a world where people are, I'm going to say, condemned for being human, for having any level of emotion, and for tapping into their heart. Well, last I checked, Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, our emotional intelligence starts with our heart, not necessarily in our intellect. If it was in our intellect all by itself, they wouldn't call it emotional intelligence. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct. They're two different things totally, because it's only through the heart that you get your emotions. The
Yes,
brain is a computer. So basically, the brain reacts to emotions. It doesn't create the emotions. It's the
exactly.
heart that creates
Exactly.
emotions.
Well, Teresa, we are at time, and I thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure. We hope that leaders and anyone that has an opportunity to watch today's broadcast, that you will take something away that will help you finish the year strong, accelerate in this last quarter. But first and foremost, remember, as you're leading, lead with gratitude and grace. You know, gratitude is the fuel that sustains momentum. And as you push through this last stretch, pause to thank your team, pause to thank your partners, pause to thank yourself, because grace allows you, it's not about religion, but grace allows you to finish not drained, but it allows you to finish divine. Who or what I need to acknowledge before this year? Ask yourself that question, and then go out and finish the year strong. Teresa, I'll put it back to you for parting words and to close us out.
My parting words would be connect to your heart, use your emotional intelligence, and just know again, there are no failures. Yes, there are failures, but every failure is an opportunity to succeed. The more you fail, the more you do succeed in the end because you gain so much wisdom from those failures. And I'm going to end us now. Thank everyone for joining us today. It was a pleasure being here. I really enjoyed the opportunity to come onto this platform and to talk with Jacqueline today. I gained so much knowledge about the business world and technology, so I really appreciate a lot of your insights. So thank you for that. Thank you to our subscribers. Thank to the Own It family. Thank you everyone who's watching and who will watch the replay. And I hope that this inspired you today.
We did good. It was only 31 minutes.
We're still